friends, Christy Teji here, your host for the Productive Passions podcast. Let me ask you, is there something different you dream of doing but don't know where to begin? If you're feeling suffocated, anxious, or you feel there's something different calling you, come along with me for candid conversations with people who have embarked on a journey to put their passions to work for them. Buckle up and enjoy the ride. Life is too short to stay stuck. Welcome to Productive Passions, where we dive deep into the minds of extraordinary individuals transforming our world through innovative thinking and purposeful action. Today, I'm sitting down with Yasmine Mamoudieh, a visionary architect, interior designer, artist, and entrepreneur who's redefining the intersection of design, sustainability, and human experience. Yasmine isn't just creating spaces. She's crafting environments that breathe life, quite literally. Her pioneering work in biophilic design goes beyond aesthetics, demonstrating how intentionally incorporating natural elements can dramatically influence our mood, productivity, and connection to the world around us. In an era where sustainability is no longer a choice, but a critical necessity, Yasmine stands at the forefront, proving that design can be a powerful catalyst for environmental and human well-being. This isn't just another conversation about problems. It's a deep dive into solutions. Mamoudieh embodies the philosophy of leading by example, showing us that meaningful change happens when we move from critique to action, from dreaming to doing. Her approach challenges us to reimagine our built environments, not as separate from nature, but as an extension of it. Today, we'll explore her innovative approaches to sustainable design, her vision for a more interconnected world, and how each of us can contribute to creating spaces that nurture both people and our planet. So buckle up for an inspiring journey into the future of design, sustainability, and human potential. Yasmine, welcome. Thank you for joining me. It is such a pleasure having you here on Productive Passions. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for inviting me.
You are an architect, you are an interior designer, an artist, and so many other things. Can you tell me a little bit in a nutshell what it is that you do when you combine all of those things?
Well, I have a passion for the creative industry, obviously. I started studying architecture and design, and actually I graduated from UCLA in Los Angeles, where I lived for 10 years. That's why I started my office like a year after. I had two passions, traveling and architecture and design. So as a child, I was like turning around my parents' houses and, being very critical, going to friends' houses when I didn't like something. Sometimes almost like, too much for my mother. But I started studying art history in Florence a bit, then, went to Geneva, studied architecture, and then San Francisco. I was 1 year in College of Notre Dame studying design. And then I moved to LA because I always thought if I want to come back to Europe, I want to have a degree from a really good university. So I went to UCLA and I graduated in architecture and design. And I have started my office almost a year after that in LA. And my passion has been to change things, to make it better. I had a very impressive and really amazing Italian professor at UCLA who became my mentor of my life. And he always said, don't fall in love with your first solution and don't do anything if it's not better. So he really was a philosopher more than just a normal design professor. And he was actually quite known globally. In the beginning, I was working on houses in Malibu and Pacific Palisades. And I was doing something for Lucas Production Studio. We had some very known clients. I redesigned the house of the Beatles in Beverly Hills, and I designed the house of the head of neurosurgeon department from UCLA.
Okay, I'm going to have you pause right there for a second because you said you did houses in Malibu and the Palisades, and you snuck in there that you redesigned the house of the Beatles. Did I understand that correctly?
That's correct. It was a Canadian-French family who bought it and, who commissioned me to redesign it for them. So that was one of my first projects when I had my own office.
And did you have freedom to do what you wanted, or did they have specific things that they wanted?
Well, they were a bit more classic than I wanted to be, but, not too much. So they let me do a lot of things, but it wasn't like 100% like, what I wanted to do. But it was in a way that I could definitely, work on upgrading the whole. It was quite, quite tired, the whole property. But no, they were quite good to work with. When I then did the house of the head of neurosurgeon from UCLA, his wife was Danish, and she was much more contemporary. And I designed a lot of very cool things for the house that, very, very unusual materials. And I was always very much into sustainability, which is today my passion. And at the time when nobody really cared about it. And I was always questioning where materials come from, and how can we not to use like very rare woods that come from the Amazon or from Brazil. I would never use that. So anyway, and then I have got very early into hospitality because I love to travel. And, I've been traveling with my parents all my life and staying in many hotels. And I thought that hospitality was the last part that hasn't really been innovated. I mean, if you think about design innovation, it usually starts with retail, then it comes into office, and then the hospitality was the last part. It was very traditional, and the only time I ever worked for before I started my company was for HNTB, Howard Needles, Stamen and Bergendorf. It's one of the biggest American architecture companies for hospitality, and I was working on Dana Point, on hotels in Palm Springs and also in Florida. But then I started to start my own practice with a Dutch architect. We partnered 50-50, and we were doing some very cool stuff. Like we won a competition to work on the Mass MoCA, which was the Massachusetts Museum of Contemporary Art. I don't know if you remember it, but it used to be a project by Dukakis, and we did a warehouse ball, and we worked directly with Thomas Krantz, who was at the time the professor in Williams College. Well, actually, he was already Guggenheim. He just became from the Guggenheim, I think, more or less. But he used to be the director in Williams College, and then his best students became the head of the project. So it was in North Adams, and it was to turn an abandoned mill into a museum of contemporary art. And we did the warehouse ball, and there was like Saatchi and Saatchi, Rothschild family, and all, the wild Berlin artists were actually displayed in the Guggenheim, and then they came to the event. So that was a very spectacular project.
Yes. I'm going to back up for just a minute because it's been a few years since you graduated. And so I'm curious, when you were in school, did you learn about sustainability? Did they talk about sustainability? Because I know that you're very passionate about that, and your work is all around sustainability and the materials that you choose. So did you learn that in school or?
No, at that time there was not. What I learned in school is how to design earthquake safe, because, there was the big earthquake in 87 where I was also in LA. We were prepared for earthquakes. There wasn't really about sustainability. But I always thought that, materials must be limited. And, where does it come from? How is it produced? What is, I was always a bit curious about finding the process of materials. So this was really early stage where, you didn't learn about it. You didn't hear about it. I mean, it wasn't really anything in anybody's mind. But that's where my initial interest started. And then, it intensified over the next decades,
Do you think you got that from your parents? Where did you get that interest in not just what a building looked like and how strong it was, but what it was comprised of, and that it wasn't detrimental to the environment? Where did that come about?
Well, I remember very vividly. I went to high school in Germany. I grew up in Hamburg, and then I left Germany after that. But I remember my geography teacher telling us that in 50 years, it was very gloomy. The world is going to be a big disaster, climate change and pollution. And, so even I was so young, it was like somehow it kept in my mind that, this is the trend. When I grew up, people were like using a street like a garbage bin. I don't know if you remember, but nobody really put stuff into garbage bins. It was like somebody will take care of it. I mean, it was a really different world. So I think this has, given me at least sensitivity to the subject at an early age.
So I was reading some information about you and your designs, and very fascinating that you consider psychology. And I've traveled a fair amount for work, and, a hotel room is a hotel room, and you go and you stay and you sleep, and there's nothing very exciting about it unless you're vacationing in a beautiful one. You're talking about bringing a different experience to hotels I'm going to see if I say it right.
Biophilic, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Biophilic.
right.
What does that mean? What is biophilic?
Biophilic looks, it means like mimicking nature. Everything. I mean, if you look at an airplane, it's mimicking birds. I mean, that's biophilic design in a way. So it's really to look at nature and then also to go beyond and look at natural materials. And I think that's been a big part of my work, to really always look into nature. And when you talk about psychology, this is what I liked, having studied at UCLA. I loved psychology, and I was 2 years studying in Geneva, architecture, and I read all the French psychology books, but I read philosophy and psychology. But I took a class called consumer psychology at UCLA, and it was not really related to it wasn't even required. But the nice thing is you could just go into classes that you had interest in. And I always thought that, everything is psychology in a sense. I did an exhibition at UCLA years later, which was just showing the fact how you can influence a behavior of human beings by form, by shape, by color, and by lighting, and without anything. And so I designed spaces that you would go through from one space to the other. And as a visitor, you had to kind of, identify, in what space am I? Is this the monotonous space, or the threatening space, or the exciting, or monotonous, or inspirational? I did it only through color, form, and lighting. And when you had like very rough corners and threatening or dark colors where you couldn't see, or rooms that were totally gray and monotonous, so human beings have a reaction to what is surrounding them. And I always thought that lighting is so important, because if you don't have the right lighting, you can get depressed, because we all need sunlight. That's the most important for our human existence. And many countries don't have sunlight, or especially the northern countries. And then what do you do? There are already lightings now that they replicate sunlight. They can even give you vitamin D. By the way, but the fact was that I said, in a hotel, the best example, and it's still not working in 90% of all the hotels in the world. I give you this idea now. If you go into a bathroom of a hotel, 90% the light is coming from above, and it gives you shadows. So it's really bad for women to put makeup. It's not good for men to shave. And the main thing is also, if the lighting is not a warm light, you look pale, I would guess that almost everyone, before leaving their room, they will have a last glance into the mirror. And, if you don't look good, you don't feel good. You go out and you might not even look like this, or you have too much blue light or too much green light. So the best lighting is candlelight and fireplace and sunlight. So that's why incandescent lighting and all these, this energy lighting, which is, by the way, also very bad for human beings, for the health, is really bad. And I think this is something where psychology plays a role, because it makes us do something. It makes us be happy, be inspired, be depressed, and this is why advertisement is working so well all over the world, because, you are attuned to emotions. You don't attune to the logic of someone. I mean, finally, also in all, purchasing in the world, it comes always down more to the emotional decision than to the logical. And if you are in a place that you feel comfortable, if you come to your home and you feel good and you feel at ease and you have a nice atmosphere, you feel better. I mean, I've seen it. I remember when I was doing my driver's license in Germany, and I went to this, office that looked horrible. I mean, they were so rude, and I was really thinking, well, I don't blame them. If I would be here every day in this kind of environment, all linoleum flooring, all horrible lighting, and I mean, it was just such a horrible design place that I said, I can sympathize with them. I can understand that they're not friendly. So we do have a lot of power. And I do believe that, especially in interior design, I mean, architecture is very important for the cityscape. And, and it's a whole different subject about longevity of a city and attractiveness of a location. But we do live mainly inside of buildings. So the interiors become so important. And it's the same, I've written and talked about office places. How do you make people more efficient in offices? Because if they feel good in an office, they might even stay longer. If the office is badly designed, bad lighting, makes you tired, you're going to try to escape and get away earlier. So every space has an influence on our, perception and on our mood.
So if we are in a space, let's take work for example. If we have one of those environments that are just dark and gloomy, and I'll tell you a little story here. I worked in a nursing home for a period of time. And when I first walked in, the interior was beige with dark brown, the handrail, the doorways were dark. I was so depressed. I went in the office that was going to be mine. Literally, I went in there and sat down and cried because I thought it just felt terrible. And after a while, I started thinking about the people who had to live there. And everybody's gloomy. Well, of course they are. It was so dark in there. How can we do things when we have that kind of environment? What are some simple things that we can do to affect a change in the way it looks and ultimately the way people feel while they're in that space?
Well, a good nursing homes, I worked on nursing homes to make them really like hotels, like that you are feeling your last years of your life are going to be enjoyable and not waiting to die. It's very easy. The first thing is colors. Usually they have horrible colors. And if you find warm colors, sunset colors, like sunsets, like warm tones, like, orange colors, red colors that are very calm and soothing, or green colors from nature coming, everything that's natural is calming. You can already do a lot. And lighting. Lighting has to be, like I said to you in the bathroom, the big mistake is lighting has to come from the front. It has to be nice lit, but you need in spaces shadow and lighting. If everything is lit, which is too much lighting in most hospitals and nursing homes, it looks depressing, especially when you have also not nice lighting coming from outside because it's a dark gray day. You're going to have to, counteract lighting inside the space. And it's always about having a lot of Kelvin, very warm lighting. Where you need to see something or work very efficiently, you can have some blue lighting during the day. If you have it too late at night, as you know, you can't sleep at night. So you can have directional lighting, but you don't light out a place completely. And it can't be just homogeneous. There has to be a variety of lighting. And I think with lighting and color at the cheapest to do, before you go into many more other things. The other thing that, as you know, I'm talking about is about materials. And the problem is that there are so many materials who have toxins. But what we don't see, we are not scared of. But the tragedy is that a lot of cancer and many diseases are caused by pollution in the environment, nutrition, food, cosmetic products that we use on our skin. But imagine we spend, again, most of our time inside spaces, and these fumes that are coming out. Concrete is very bad. Even the streets with having asphalt, you can just Google it, is cancerous. My passion has been in the last, decades to really research materials that would change this. So we have found the most amazing material in Italy who won a regenerative prize that is photovoltaic, and it can replace asphalt. And it's even the same price. And that's the amazing thing, because there's a lot of misconceptions saying, well, we would like to do it, but it's too expensive. And I can prove that the opposite,
What was that material called?
It's a company in Italy who creates a photovoltaic, replaced, kind of a flooring material for streets, for parking, for outdoor areas. And it's absolutely absorbing even CO2.
I saw that there is material. Is that the one that absorbs CO2 that can be used inside as well?
We are working with paints that absorb CO2, like instead of normal paint, we have paints that absorb CO2. We are also working with materials like hempcrete, which is to me the most amazing material, which comes from cannabis. And it has the best temperature regulation, and it absorbs CO2. And it also reduces your energy cost by 50%. So,
oh my gosh.
These are the things that I really want to make known to the world, and I use art exhibitions and design and, other mediums. I like also augmented reality, which I've done some very cool stuff in Lugano last year and in Milan, in order to make it a bit more attractive, that it's not just like dry, but, to get younger generation excited into it and to see also, instead of just criticizing what's happening and the gloomy and doomy days of the world, we need solutions. We need alternatives. It's not enough to be aware of all the bad things unless we have solutions. And I think there are more solutions than we are aware of. And this is where I want to shed light on.
Do you find it difficult to convince other architects, other builders to begin to use these types of products?
Unfortunately, there's a lot of ignorance. The one thing that I think will change it is I'm working on it's going to be like a startup. We have accumulated 200 plus sustainable and recycled materials over decades. So what I will do is next year, it will be on an online marketplace, not just to find it, but to order it. So it would really make it easy for all these amazing companies around the world to be discovered. And it will be B2B and B2C. So it will be for contractors, developers, but also for architects and homeowners. I mean, the one thing that I reproach to many architects and designers when I go and talk at many international events is that they haven't done their research. It's not that this suddenly appears in front of me. We have done decades of research to find out what there is, because, at the same time, we are responsible. 40% of CO2 comes from the construction industry. So we can't just continue building and being proud of our prices and, whatever we do if we are talented, without the consequences of that we are damaging the planet of our children. And I think this is where I feel, there has to be a collective responsibility. And I'm working on a exhibition in Venice for the Architecture Biennale next year. But I'm looking for sponsors. And now it will be, we will see if some of the big companies who could easily sponsor a project like this, coming to your question, will actually sponsor it. Because it would show how, first of all, we can recycle plastic. Because I've done this big exhibition at Design Miami in Art Basel on 3D printed and recycled plastic for architecture, design, and art. And I want to show that, this is like we should all use plastic waste in architecture and design, because it does not magically disappear, which is totally unrealistic. If today we would stop producing any plastics, it will take hundreds of years to be dissolved. So that means, while we are living at this moment in time, there's tons and tons of plastic every day, filling the oceans, filling landfills. And with 3D printing, really take tons of this and design it in architecture and design. So that's one of my messages. And the other one is mycelium, which is the root of fungus, can replace plastic. It does already, by the way, in certain areas in America. There's two extremely well-funded startups. One is Evocative, and they are doing packaging. And they have huge factories in America to replace styrofoam and plastic packaging, because all furniture, everything that we receive more or less is packaged in plastic or styrofoam. And they have this amazing, it's a young guy, Eben Bayer, who started this company, which is very impressive. The other one is in the leather industry in San Francisco, started by an artist, which is called Fine Mycelium, and it's practically a substitute for animal leather.
And it's called
Mycelium.
Celium?
Mycelium, which is the root of fungus, Mycelium. And this is what I want to show in this exhibition, that we can use it in design and architecture to show to the world we have solutions for the problem that we have with the plastic waste. And we have solutions how in the future it can be exchanged, and not only plastic, but also concrete, which is really bad for the environment. So it's a more artistic exhibition, obviously, because it's, Venice for the Biennale, but this would give ideas of what we can do. And, we are in the middle of fundraising, and, I will let you know if we manage to get this project off the ground.
Please. So let me ask you, if I am a builder and I say, Yasmin, I love what you're doing. Sign me up. I want to buy it for my next building. How do people learn about where to get it? Is there enough being produced currently that somebody could build a house or could build an office building? Where do they get it? Who do they call?
So what we do is, before when the marketplace is launched next year, it will be very easy to access it. At the moment, we are consulting companies, construction companies, other companies, to see what exactly do you need, because there are different companies. There are smaller to bigger ones, but we definitely have companies that we can find for them, which can do bigger projects. Even some of the materials there, even you can do like a 200 apartment building. It's not.
Wow. You were saying that people can find it, and enough for large apartment complexes. And I'll tell you, where I'm living right now, we are in a growth spurt. We live near the space station, or the space center, the Kennedy Space Center. And I feel like every month there's a new housing complex, apartment complex, business complexes. So there is enough. And you said with the marketplace, which you're hoping will be open next year, somebody will be able to reach out and
come on it and find everything they want. It will only be sustainable or recycled materials. And it would be for architecture, for exterior, for interior, for furniture, and even for fashion, because some of the fabrics can be used in fashion too. So it would be a very comprehensive, I call it the booking.com of sustainable materials, because it has to be easy access, easy, and you just want to be able to also be able to order it so that you don't lose any time.
So Yasmin, I am an artist and I make furniture. I'm making this up. I make furniture out of very exotic wood. And I'm beginning to think that I need to change that practice. Is there someone who could teach me how to still be creative and design, but with this new medium?
Well, I think that, if you're talking about fine woods or like the exotic woods, which are really bad for the rainforest in the Amazon, which nobody should use, which used to be used in luxury, hospitality or luxury residences, you just look for other woods. There's reclaimed wood, and it comes in many countries because a lot of waste that also is being repurposed. And I think this is what the exciting part is, and this exists in every country in the world. I mean, there is a company in Kenya who is doing from plastic waste building blocks that are as strong as concrete. I mean, it's mind-blowing. They do flooring. It's all done by a 29-year-old lady, who she won many awards, who had this passion for it. And, with the marketplace, we will also want to feature these amazing stories, because the people behind some of these material companies are really interesting characters, because they go beyond profit, which is, by the way, I do believe that the most profitable companies will be these companies in the future, my conviction. But they haven't done it just for profit. They have done it for passion, because they want to contribute to something good in the world. They understand there is finite resources, and we can't pretend that everything is going to go on, because in our lifetime we might be safe. But, I think anybody who has children has full responsibility, and there's no time to wait. I always feel when I go to places and conferences and there are other designers, and when they ask, okay, what can you do? Yeah, well, it's not yet there it comes. And I get really furious, because it's not true. There are many solutions. They're not being deployed.
And I think sustainability has become a buzzword, right? And there are some people that they want to be known as a sustainable company.
By marketing. Yeah.
Right. But then there are people who are anti-sustainability. But in my mind, and I definitely love your opinion about this, moving towards sustainability is just a natural evolution for us. We were using things before that we learned were strong and that could build big buildings and could do the things we want. Now we understand that there is a way to use different materials, or to use those materials that we had used and repurpose them. That it's not a political thing; it's an evolution thing.
No, I would totally agree with what you just said, because it's, we have used up a lot of resources, and we have too many things in general. We have too many production. There's too many fairs with too many new products that we don't really need. There's too much quantity instead of quality. And I think it's the whole thing about, going back to quality of life, quality of products, instead of having, 50 T-shirts, you have a few really good ones. I mean, I'm really interested also in the fashion. I work with EcoAlf, who is a Spanish ecological fashion brand, which is amazing. And they also have a foundation where they clean the oceans by fishermen, supporting fishermen to get everything out of the ocean with the nets, and then reusing it. And there's a few really great people in the world who are doing something. It should be many more. And I think that the awareness is also that they will be pointed out in the future, because they are the ones who are really doing something right now and not waiting for it. And I think, like I said, we have to act now. And when you talk about sustainable materials, you also looked about embodied carbon, because how's the production? Where is it coming from? I mean, it's the whole life cycle, of a product. It's why cradle to cradle became very famous, some time ago.
Do you believe that to maybe speed up that evolution, or for that evolution to even occur, that we really need policies and laws that support not just recycling, not just putting stuff in a recycle bin, but really holding companies responsible for their contribution to sustainability, but also their contribution to waste and to pollution, holding them accountable to both. It seems as
Absolutely.
though
We absolutely need regulations and laws because unfortunately many people won't do anything unless they're forced to. I mean, there's going to be carbon taxes coming, and I'm very connected to many. Actually an ambassador for several global organizations for sustainability. I'm working with a wonderful site which is called It Must Be Now. .com, which is an amazing site where luxury hotels are listed only if they have a certification with EarthCheck, which is from Australia, and it's the most known for the upscale tourism industry. And to make sure that there's a certain travelers who really want to find hotels they travel to, which are checked and who are in this network of these hotels. And we have to understand that the whole way of how we consume things, how we take care of waste. I mean, as a designer and artist, an architect, we work with companies that create tableware out of waste. So food waste. I mean, it's fantastic what some people are doing with food waste. And there are other waste products are being built, and they will be also part on our platform. So there is so much more that can be done. And like I said, it will be mainly happening in quicker, faster if the regulations become more strict, which they will. I mean, at least I know the EU is very tough, and I think many other countries around the world are also going to
following suit. And I like what you say about the companies that are going to be successful and probably financially do very well are the ones who begin to adopt this. We see a lot of copycat companies that get started just copying other companies that had been successful. And so many people producing, like you talked about earlier, producing more, trying to make the cost of something less instead of that very innovative. There are companies and there are individuals, like you mentioned, the 29-year-old in Kenya, creating material that is, using recycled material that is as strong as concrete. These are the people that, to your point, are the future. These are the companies that are the companies of the future that people are going to turn to if they're not adopting sustainability now, they will have to when there are policy changes. And these companies that are getting started down this path now will be ready, they'll be experienced to help people.
And I also believe you will get easier financing. There's already like a trend for green financing, and they will not get access to capital. I mean, as easy as this. I really believe there is big ignorance about it, and there will be a wake-up call for many companies. And I always think you have to embrace the future before it's there. In business, it's the most, I think, wise advice you can give to anyone. And therefore, there is absolutely no time to wait. It has to be now.
It has to be now. I love that phrase. I want to ask you a little bit more about yourself. How would you describe yourself?
I'm a very creative person. I think that's my biggest strength, but I also know how to implement because, if you're an architect or designer, you're going to see your product realized, or you see your building to walk into or whatever. So I'm not just a dreamer. I like to use my creativity to solve problems of the world. And I mean, I do want to leave the world in a better place than I found it. That's, I do think about my legacy. And I mean, I've been teaching for a very long time. I was the first teacher ever to teach in a hotel school at the École Hôtelière de Lausanne. In the beginning, architecture and design concepts, but then more and more now also on sustainability. I've been teaching at the Institut Paul Bocuse in Lyon and Paris. And I'm a mentor at the Royal College of Art in London in architecture. And I really push sustainability in where it's not even there. So I think that I'm very, I don't know, I won't call myself an activist, but because it could have also negative effect. I don't want to blame anyone. I don't want to say, I just want to show solutions. And, I always remember the wise words of Mother Teresa when she was asked if she would go on a march for the Vietnam War. And she said, no, but if there would be a march for peace, I would go. And, I feel the same. I don't think it's about making everything bad and being extreme, but we have to educate and we have to show by example. And I think that's why if we, if what I do gets more exposure, and these exhibitions like, a Venice Biennale is an amazing tool that you get millions of people to see what you do and give a message in an artistic way, then I think it will have much more effect and ripple effect than, just doing my own projects.
You're a bit of an educator as well. Not a bit. You are absolutely an educator, which is important for affecting change.
Yes, exactly. And I think, when you really are in a new territory and with all these materials, and I mean, first you read about it, then you talk about it, you try to understand it. But when you teach it, you really go deep into it. And I think it's almost like self-teaching, the deeper and more expert you become in a field, because you are spreading it, and, you're giving your knowledge and wisdom to other people. And I think this is what we all have to do in order to benefit from it.
So I was going to ask you about how you go from being creative to making things happen, because we all have great ideas. It's one thing to be creative and have ideas. It's another thing to be able to implement those. So how have you found it? Has it been through teaching? How have you found the path from, I think this will work, I think this is important, to actually making that happen?
Well, I think, for me, the most important is that you're not either creative or you are functional, or you have to be all. It's like a conductor in an orchestra. It wouldn't work if you're not able to orchestra every different musician. I see myself in the same role as a conductor. So it means that, first of all, I don't like spaces that are not functional. And especially when you're in hospitality, you have to really think about it. How is the service people going to go through it? Is it easy to clean your hotel room? Is it easy to maintain it? Did you choose materials that will last for a long time? So that's a functional aspect. The creativity, I feel, is like my natural talent, and it's a given, But then also, I do also think about finances, because, as I told you, I'm working on my own luxury sustainable hotel brand, where I'm actually, or maybe I didn't say it yet, but where I'm looking for investors. So I do understand that you have to have financial success for anything in life to work. It's not either or, and I have proven to my clients that when I designed hotels for them, or offices or retail, that they were more profitable than many other competitors, that they could raise their, daily rates. So I prove by doing it, I have proof in my life through my projects that are super successful. Besides having won many awards, the clients love it, because at the end of the day, you don't even work for the client, you work for the end user, So sometimes you even have to have a very strong client to explain that's all great, but, how is this going to work with your customers, And coming back to psychology, you have to be a good psychiatrist sometimes to the situation and to the team, and get everybody passionate about, we're all in the same track to get a great result that's going to be financially successful, that, hopefully gets awards because it's seen, it's frequented, it's working, it makes people happy. And I think if I create spaces where people love to work in, or love to, visit, or love to live in, then I feel I have, I've done something good. So I think you have to have all the factors, and you don't cut the corners. And then if you have a client, because just time-wise, you can't do good work because somebody wants it to be very cheaply done, then you just have to say no. I say no more than I say yes. I think if you trust somebody that has the expertise to help you, then you also have to let go.
You mentioned awards, and you have numerous awards. You have been honored with numerous awards for your work. What are you most proud of?
Well, I think I'm most proud of, I won an award some time ago for the first hotel for disabled people in the world, for special needs, for inclusive, which was outside Berlin, for a German foundation. And it was the first hotel ever in the world. And I had awards from London, and I was giving a talk at the Hamlin Center at Royal College of Art in London. And it was like, when I went to the opening, there were people in their wheelchairs coming towards me with tears in their eyes, and saying, we couldn't believe that you have created a world that it doesn't look anything like for people that have any kind of special needs, but it was totally fulfilling. But it was very clever design. And again, materials. I didn't use any stainless steel because I said it would remind me of a wheelchair. So I had crushed glass in paint on the walls, so that even if you would kind of run into the wall, it wouldn't damage the wall. in the bedrooms, in the guest rooms, you could do your own clothing. You could hang it because you had something automatically coming down to put your hangers. So you're not so dependent on
So you
someone.
were reminded of being different.
Yes.
It was part of the design to be accessible. What was the name of that hotel?
It's called Haus Rheinsberg. It's outside Berlin. And, this is like one of my projects, but it's many projects. I also designed the Intercontinental outside Salzburg. And that was a very delicate project because of it used to be Berchtesgaden, where Hitler used to have his big estate. And, there was a lot of controversy for this project to be happening. And, I was under the Intercontinental at the time was the only brand that could even manage it because they had hotels in Palestine and in Israel. And I won a competition to design the hotel, all the interiors. And I also worked on the exterior because the architect has done mainly office buildings, not hotels before. But it was like, I was saying, this is the most beautiful nature. We have to rewrite history. Why would we, think about the atrocities? And by the way, my client, Bavarian Bank, they built a very interesting documentary, which is showing all the atrocities of, of the Second World War. So that was all covered there in a very extensive way. But it was about, creating something beautiful and not making it like a monument to really a dark part of history. And it won 5 times the World Travel Award. It was selected among the 100 most beautiful hotels in the world. And I really proudly show it even today because it opened in 2006 and it has almost not been renovated, which is normally not normal because it tells you the interiors change every 5 to 7 years. So this hotel has been, more or less the same since 2006. And it even changed operator because now it's run by Kempinski.
So it sounds like you took a place that, like you said, was the place where atrocities developed, but the area around it was beautiful. So being able to pull that beauty in, it sounds like the owner at the time did recognize and make sure that people hadn't forgotten what had happened there, but really be able to transform it into something beautiful because what surrounded it was beautiful. And you were just able to highlight that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I'd love to ask you, what is a little known fact about you?
I'm very spiritual. I think that, my formation, one of the most important part of my life was in California, the 10 years that I lived there. And I had a Chinese doctor. I'm super interested in alternative medicine. I do respect medicine, but I think complementary is the best. And I can't wait to go to a Joe Dispenza retreat, which is on my bucket list, which I haven't done yet because
I hope we meet there.
Yes, hopefully. I really do believe that there's many things that we don't grasp. We are too logical and, thinking as everything that we see is only what exists. I think there's a world beyond that. And I think it's very exciting when you start to realize that and when you dig deeper into it. And things happen for a reason. But I think it gives you also a lot of wisdom and patience. Sometimes I'm very impatient. I could be very impatient, or I was very impatient. And I've learned also through meditation to calm down and, to find more your inner power.
Well, isn't that part of evolution too? Not just personal evolution for sure, but also I think as a species, we're starting to learn that these things that seem to be a little out there and wacky, there's something to them. There's something that we just don't know that we're just beginning to tap into. So yes, I definitely agree with that. You mentioned when you were younger, you traveled a lot with your family. What was life like for you when you were younger?
I had a Persian father and a German mother. So, having two very opposite cultures. And my father has lived and studied in Venice and Cairo before he came to Germany. And he just loved traveling. So we have been all around the world from, Africa, Asia. And it did shape me because I did see, you see so many things. And ask me where's my inspiration from. It comes a lot from traveling. And so often when I'm in a plane, I just gather my ideas and I think about things twice. Or I could be in an opera and get an inspiration. I could be in an in a museum and get an installation. I look at beautiful art and it gives me, ideas of color schemes. I look at nature, but also nature is very important. I really, really love nature. And in the sense that I always try to go out I really like to be more outside buildings than inside. And even having lived in London for 14 years, I mean, I don't know if you know, but we were very lucky during the pandemic that the weather was amazing. And I was always in my outdoor patio every day, and even if it's a bit cold. So I feel, very connected to nature. And I think the world is so beautiful. I don't really understand all this passion to go to Mars and the moon when the world is so big that I won't even see everything I would like to see in my lifetime. I think especially, natural beauty is like what totally excites me. And I still have a lot of countries on my bucket list.
That's fascinating. It's interesting that you say that about space, because a few episodes ago, I spoke to a gentleman who is growing plants in space, and he talks about sustainability and what doing that stuff in space has taught us for sustainability here in terms of feeding the number of people that will be on this planet. So, very interesting things and very interesting technology that we've gained from going to space, learning about things.
I totally agree. I mean, I worked on a very crazy hotel project for Dubai, but it was very early, like almost 20 years ago. I called it the Fly Hotel. I did it with a Dutch architect together, and it was having a hangar for water planes, because when they were building the world, I said, you will never see the map of the world unless you're in a bird's eye perspective. And I met the nephew of Dornier, the airline company who actually helped many Jewish people to escape during the World War. And so we had this whole idea, and I designed this concept and architecture. We won an architecture award, but they were like also, it wasn't built, it was too early. It was like, the early times of Dubai. But one of the materials that we used was from a discovery from the moon. And it would allow you to do what we called it mass customization instead of mass production. We had a very organic shaped building, which you could literally get manufactured in Holland and bring it over to assemble it. So it's called mass customization because it's not every part is different, but because of this material from, this technology from the moon, it was possible to do something. So I had my own experience with what you're saying, and I think it's absolutely true.
I have to say, I love what you talk about the beauty of this world. There is so much, and so much in so little time to be able to go and see those places. And
it's everywhere, I mean, I had on my bucket list, many more places in Africa I haven't seen, South America, Asia. There is so much beauty around the world. And it's like I said, I think it's also a power to see how beautiful nature is. And, when you think about color schemes, there is no color in nature that doesn't fit. We can see artificial colors. When I give lectures about this, I will say, you can find things that don't fit because they're not natural. But have you ever seen flowers next to each other that don't fit? No, it doesn't exist, because nature is just done in a way, that it's all fitting. And I think this way of looking at a natural life, a healthy life, that's so important. So partly of what I'm preaching about, is I gave a talk during the World Economic Forum this year in Davos on healthy materials. I called it material wellness. And my own hotel brand concept I'm working on is going to be the first prototype of only sustainable, healthy materials, plus, very, I think, quite amazing design. But it's because we don't see all the toxins that are hidden. Many woods have formaldehyde, and concrete has fumes that are coming into space. So they are all terrible. And so, again, there's not enough knowledge about it. But I think this is where we have to understand what we can do, because another passion of mine is, in my concept, is about longevity and biohacking. So I'm working on this hacking concept integrated with hospitality. And it looks like people are all interested in going into this trend, but nobody has tackled it from thinking about not just the sustainability of our life, but also the materials, because we can have all the knowledge of neuroscience of how to extend our lifespan. But if we don't extend our health span, there's no use. And the health span is not just through supplements and nutrition, but it's also to not be surrounded by materials that are going to trigger disease, allergy, inflammation, and even cancer.
I love that you say that, because in some of my work in the past, we did work on biohacking, and it was all the things that we could do for ourselves. But I didn't even consider what we're surrounded by as impacting our health and wellness. We could do all of the right things, the exercising, the eating right, getting good sleep, being outside. But if we're surrounded by things that are making us sick.
But it's like, it's like the air quality. I mean, I'm looking at Dubai and I'm trying to see if I can help Dubai. It's an interesting process to see if it will work. But because Dubai has a horrible air pollution, I was giving, a talk during COP28, and I used this app called IQ Air, where you can detect the pollution everywhere in the world. It has sensors all over the world. And it was red, red, red. I mean, this is so high. It's 8 times as high as the WHO has recommendations, and it does reduce your life. I mean, the statistics say by 5 years, your life is reduced when you live in this environment. So there is so much to do. And that's why we have to come up with ideas and building materials that clean the air instead of damaging the air. So one is the petrol, production is one thing. But if we already, all these buildings that are being built over and over, all over, the UAE, for example, we do need to understand that we can combat it. And they don't know that they will not live as long as they might want to live, because it's counterproductive, if you continue the same way. And
well, they grew very big, very fast,
yeah,
using, my guess is, a lot of the materials that contribute to toxic air.
Yeah. But, I was in Italy with this company that is doing this amazing material, hempcrete. And when the flooding was in Dubai, and I was telling him, so imagine, I think the damage is, if I understand, is like huge. I don't know if it's 1 billion, 2 billion damage from the flooding in Dubai that you saw a few months ago. And I was saying, if this would have been, if a lot of the houses have been built with this material, what would have changed? He said there would be no damage, because it would have taken water, it would have completely dried out. It's porous and it's temperature regulating, takes 20% less of, humidity. So my goal is that to these countries which really need it, to see if I can, bring it in. And I'm always interested to meet people who really innovate. There's another thing that's very interesting coming from Venice, Italy, from a young startup who created with nanotechnology a device that if you're in your space, and a hotel room would be perfect, but also your own office area. And if you have this device, it's not like the normal filtering process, but it's nanotechnology. You don't have any filter that you have to exchange, which sometimes you don't know if it's too old, and it could be actually bringing you bacteria. And they have an app connected to it, and you can see where you are, working, or when you're in your hotel room, that the quality of air, even if it's outside bad air, is improved.
That's probably one of those invisible things that people don't want to see, or would shock them to see.
Yes, exactly. And then, when you see that you can improve the quality of the air that you're breathing in, usually you feel it. I mean, if you're a bit sensitive, you can feel. I feel it when I go out and the pollution is very high, and I feel suffer. I mean, I really feel it's not good. And you shouldn't do sport, when they also announce, please don't do sports because it's not good, to inhale. So again, there are things we can do, and we have to support these companies who are inventing, amazing products.
So the sustainable hotel brand that you're developing, where will that be? Have you decided?
It's a global brand, and it will depend ultimately on where the investor is coming from, because we identified it's outside metropolitan cities within an hour. So it's always in the countryside, but always in vicinity. And it's always a combination of hotel rooms and cottages that you sell and lease back to the hotel. So it's about sharing economy, which I think is the future anyway. And it can be outside New York. It can be, mainly we are looking in America, secondary cities, actually Boulder, Colorado, Austin, Texas. We're looking Asia, like Singapore, which is already a very sustainable place. And we're looking, outside Lisbon, outside London. It's a global concept. So my goal is to get the first prototype done, to get started next year. And then once I can show also to the world what we can do and how we can build with all these amazing materials, it's also a bit of a showcase for the ESG marketplace that should be launched next year, that can give really a lot of information to many people around the world of how we can build.
If somebody is listening and wants to be an investor or learn more, how do they find you?
They can Google my name and they find probably everything about me, my website, which is, mammoutier.com. But the easiest is to either connect to me on LinkedIn. I think LinkedIn is the best to look on LinkedIn, send me a message on LinkedIn. Or, my email is super easy. It's mamouti@mamouti.com. And connect on social media, Instagram. But my strongest is LinkedIn. And very happy to connect.
Okay. I'm going to put that information in our show notes. So if anybody does want to reach out to you, they can reach out to you. They can find you on LinkedIn. They can find your website. I just wanted to say thank you again for joining me. This has been such an invigorating, exciting conversation. And I cannot wait to see what comes about as changes in policy and legislation occur, and also understanding. Good luck to you. I think that you are somebody I admire very much, and I can't wait to watch your sustainable hotel brand take off.
Thank you for your kind words, and hopefully we meet each other when I'm in Florida.